All right, we're going to be working on lesson 3.6, which is called compound inequalities. Okay, so our objectives are going to be to solve an inequality containing the word and then solve an inequality containing the word or. So what I like you to do is kind of go back and think about what a compound sentence means, like back in English class. Okay, so a compound sentence is a sentence that use the words, connecting words and or. So an example, I am going to the movies and to dinner. So and implies that both parts are going to happen. I'm going to go see the movie and I'm going to go to dinner. Where the word or, when we place that in there, it's going to change the meaning. I am going to the movies or I am going to dinner. So when we have the or word, only one part's true. So on and, both are going to happen. On an or, only one happens, either movie or the dinner. So it's the same thing in math. A compound inequality, okay, is going to have connection words either and or, okay? So that's what we're going to be looking at, and or statements. So an and statement must be true for both inequalities. So just up here, and statement, it's true for the movies and dinner. We're going to movies and dinner. It's the same thing in math. They both have to be true. And when we look at the graph, all right, this right here is applying to the graph. We're going to see where do they overlap. And so we'll look more closely at that here in a little bit. On the or statement, only one of them is true, or both. I mean, it could be this or this. I'm going to the movies or I'm going to go to dinner. Kind of implies that at least one part's going to happen and maybe on a special occasion both happen, okay? So when we're looking at the graph, it's what's either been graphed or where's their shading at. Kind of just depends on how you want to think of it. All right, so today, I'm just going to take you through the and statements, okay? So right here, we're just going to work on the and statements, and then in the next video, we're going to work on the or statements. All right, so let's zoom in here on example 1. Okay, it says write a compound inequality that represents the phrase, and then graph, okay? So all real numbers that are greater than -2 and less than 6. All right, so I'm going to kind of zoom in here a little bit. So if I'm thinking about greater than -2, right, we'd have something like x greater than -2, and x would be less than 6, okay? So these are kind of, if you want to think of them, these are like your two endings, okay? So we can either read -2 or we can be 6, okay? And then put your symbols in. The front, the x's, we're just using that twice, okay? So if you want to think of these as two ending points. Okay, so now when we have an and statement, okay, and I want to stress this, when we see the word and, we're going to write it in a special format. And so how we're going to write it is we're going to put the x in the middle, and we're going to put our smallest number at the beginning and our biggest number at the end, and then we're just going to insert the inequalities. So now if I look kind of here at the 6, x is less than 6. Well, I already have that set up to go right there. X is less than 6. Now, the problem is this guy right here. If I look here and I look here, you can see that we flip-flopped the x and the -2. So if those flip-flop, guess what's got to happen to your symbol? It's got to flip-flop as well, okay? And this is how we're going to write a compound inequality with an and in it, okay? Ors will be a little different, but this will be an and statement. And so you would read this as -2 is less than x, which is less than 6. Okay, now I'll give you a hint here. Guys, usually these are always going to go in the same direction. And if you go from least to greatest, they'll always be less than. Okay, all right, so let's try the next one here. So all real numbers that are between -4 and 8. So now, kind of the same setup we have up here, right here. Okay, so except for I'm between these numbers. So I'm going to be between -4 and 8. I know my variable's between it. And then we're always going to have less than in there, okay? Because I'm going to go from -4 all the way up to +8. Okay, and since they use the word between, it means it's not going to be equal to it, okay? So we're not going to put an equal sign in what's between. It's between -4 and 8. It's not actually equal to them. All right, let's go over the next page. All right, so as I read the directions here, solve each compound inequality, then graph the solution set. Write your final solution in set builder notation, okay? All right, so if we kind of zoom in here on this first one, okay? So if I'm looking here, they give you the word and in the middle just to let you know that there are two different guys that we're looking at. So we're looking at this guy, we're going to solve it, and we're going to look at this guy and solve it, okay? So obviously we're going to be adding the 3 over to the other side. So we're going to get y is greater than or equal to -8. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and solve the other one. We're going to add 3 as well on this one and get y is less than or equal to negative 5. Okay, so now when I graph it, I'm going to put down just a quick sketch. So like negative 5, negative 6, negative 7, negative 8. Okay, so at negative 8, I'm going to do all of my work up above here. On this right here, I'm going to put my final answer. Okay, so 8, close circle, and we're going to shade off to the right. And then for the negative 5, I've got a closed circle as well there, and we're going to shade off to the left. Okay, so now back on the front page, if you flip back over and look there, when we had an and statement, when we talked about the graph, it would be where do they overlap? That's what I'm asking myself, where do they overlap? So if I'm looking here, they're overlapping from 8 to negative 5. So where they overlap is your answer. Okay, so my final answer down on my actual grid, I'm going to have a closed circle on negative 8, a closed circle on negative 5, and I'm going to shade everything in between. Okay, so now when I write my final answer, it's going to be in Set Builder. So we're going to go ahead and start with our bracket. Our variable's a y, line, and now it's going to look just a touch different. Since we are technically between, like if we just thought about that, we're technically between the negative 8 to 5. I'm going to still start with my smallest number. I'm going to go up to my biggest number, and I'm going to put my variable in the middle. Okay? And then I'm looking, basically, you guys can kind of look back up here for your signs, okay? So on this guy right here, we know that it's going to be less than or equal. And if, again, I'm just dropping this guy straight down because it's already written, ready to go. Now on this guy, just like last time, notice how it's backwards. So if we look here, we look here. So then we are going to flip our sign and make it less than or equal. Now, again, you usually should have less than or equal. So this guy right here, this graph, and this answer would be my final solution. All right. Let's go to the next one. Now, there are going to be times where you see an and statement, what I call kind of squished together. So if we look here, this is all like one big problem. We don't have the word and in the middle or anything like that. And what you need to know on this is we are going to share this middle part right here. Okay, so this middle part's actually can go with both parts. So when I write this, I'm going to have 6, not highlight, here we go. 6 less than or equal to r plus 7, and r plus 7 is less than 10. Okay, so now you're going to solve both parts. So I'm going to subtract the 7 here and get negative 1. I'm going to subtract the 7 here and get 3. Okay, so again, I'm going to look at my number line here. And let's see, I'm going to negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, again, I'm going to show my work above. So on this guy, remember, you technically have to rewrite it with the variable up front before you graph. So I have a closed circle heading to the right. And on the 3, I've got an open circle heading to the left. Again, we're looking where do they overlap since it's an and statement. Everywhere in the middle is where they overlap. So I'm going to have a closed circle on negative 1. Again, I'm just dropping down whatever I had there. Closed. This guy's open. And everything in between is your answer. Okay? So now we need to write our final solution. So my final solution, again, I'm going to start with my small number, big number, variable in the middle. Keep in mind, usually less than. And then if I look here on this guy, so I have the equal sign, right? I mean, you got it right here. It's just going to be right here. You're going to put the equal sign on this guy. Okay, put a line and an R out front and put your set brackets. So again, this is my final answer with my final graph right there. Okay. All right, next problem. So now this one's kind of sweet because this guy's already solved. We don't have to do anything there. We just need to solve this guy. So we're going to start by subtracting the 3 off. So 1/2 x is less than or equal to 6. And then I'm going to multiply both sides by 2, or 2 over 1, and get 12. Okay? All right, so now when I do a quick sketch of this guy, I'm going to just put 12 down here. I'm not going to put a bunch of hash marks. I'm just going to put 21 up here. Okay? So now when I graph the 12, I've got a closed circle here heading out. And on the 21, I've got a closed circle heading out. If we remember, what we've been talking about is we've been looking where do these guys overlap? Well, they don't overlap. So if they don't overlap, that's going to be a no solution. There are no answers that work here. So then technically that would be my final graph. and this would be my final answer, no solution. Now, if you really wanted to put no solution in set brackets, you can, but you don't need to do that, okay? Just no solution will work as well. All right, let's go to D. So again, on D, we see that the middle's being shared. So we're going to take this guy and we're going to share it to both parts. So I'm going to rewrite it as 20. Oh, darn it. Let's try that again. 20 is less than negative 2x plus 4, and negative 2x plus 4 is greater than 16. Okay, so again, we're going to solve. I'm going to start by subtracting the 4 over and get it 16, less than negative 2. Now I'm going to divide by negative 2. Remember, when we divide by a negative, your sign's got to flip. Your inequality sign's got to flip. So I'm going to get negative 8, sign flips, x. Okay, same thing here. Subtract the 4 over and get 12. Divide by negative 2. Sign's going to flip because I'm dividing by negative, and I've got negative 6. Okay, so now keep in mind before we graph that technically we need to rewrite that guy so that the variable's out in front. Okay, so now I'm going to start my graph here. So I've got negative 8, negative 7, negative 6. All right, so negative 8, I've got an open circle heading to the left. And with this negative 6, I've got an open circle heading to the left as well. So now if we look at where they overlap, well, they're overlapping from here on out. So that's your answer, is going to be from the 8 out, okay? So in this case, I'm not going to include the 6 because it's not overlapping at the 6. So my final answer here would be x is less than negative 8. I'm going to put a line x in my set brackets, okay? All right, so now technically when we're looking at our final picture here, oops, no, what happened? Sorry, guys. All right, so when I'm looking at my final picture here, it technically will be at negative 8. I will have an open circle and we'll be heading out this way. So this would be my final answer with my final graph. All right, so now it's asking us to write a compound inequality and solve each problem. This includes graphing, and write your final solution in set builder notation. Okay, so now this one's just kind of break down the words. So a number plus 1 is greater than negative 5 and less than 3. So x plus 1 is greater than negative 5, and then you see that word and, so and. All right, now again, they're just giving you an ending here. So if you're looking here, is greater than negative 5 and less than 3. So those are your two endings. This first part right here, you're going to repeat. So the x plus 1 gets just written down twice. So I'll have x plus 1 less than 3. All right, so I'm going to subtract the 1 over and get x is greater than negative 6. Subtract the 1, x is less than 2. Okay, I'm going to do a quick sketch here. So again, I'm not going to put a bunch in the middle here. So negative 6, open circle, shading to the right. Negative 2, open circle, shade to the right. Again, are they overlapping? The answer is yes, they're overlapping from here to here, so that's your final answer. So I'm going to be from negative 6, x in the middle, to 2. Again, less thans, and there's no equal sign, so there's my answer, line x, set bracket. Okay, so your final solution, I should be putting that on my graph, would be open circles here and everywhere in between. So that's what my final graph would look like. Okay, all right, let's go over to the next page. All right, last two problems. Write a compound inequality for each graph. So you've actually already been doing this. You just have been doing it with the actual problem. So here we're going to do negative 3, small number to big number, 3, variable in the middle. Remember, they're always less thans. And then just check, do I have anyone that has a closed circle? Well, this is open, so no equal sign. This is closed, though, so I need to include an equal sign. And then if it does say something about set builder, just line X, set bracket. All right, and last one for today. To earn a B in your algebra class, you must earn between an 85 and an 86 inclusive, okay? So inclusive just means in between. It's an and statement. You've scored an 86, an 85, and an 80 on the first 3 tests. What possible scores can you earn on the 4th test to earn a B in the class? Define a variable, write a compound inequality, and solve. write your solution in a complete sentence. Okay? So first off, let's kind of zoom in here and talk about, you have scored this on your first 3 tests, okay? And so now we're looking for what possible scores can we have on the 4th test to get to that B. So if I'm looking here, I've got an 86, an 85, and an 80, and an unknown 4th test score, and there's going to be 4 tests. So that's how I'm averaging it out. Okay, so when I define my variable here, I'm going to say that x equals the 4th test score. Okay, all right, and so then I'm going to kind of finish up my inequality here. I want between an 84 and an 86, so I'm going to be between an 84 and an 86. Again, I have the less than. Now, I put an equal sign because technically I can equal both of those. As long as I get exactly an 84, exactly an 86, I can get there. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and solve. So we're going to add these guys up first. And when we add those up, you should get 251. So I've got 84 less than or equal to 251 plus x divided by 4 is less than or equal to 86. Okay, and then this is where you can go ahead and kind of break it into 2 parts. Oh, I wrote kind of big there, didn't I? So we can get 84 is less than or equal to 251 plus x divided by 4. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and divide by 4, or sorry, multiply both sides by 4. Okay, and I'm going to end up with 336 less than or equal to 251 plus x, and then I'm going to take the 336 minus the 251 from both sides and get 85. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to change colors here and do the next one. So I have 251 plus x divided by 4 is less than or equal to 86. So again, I'm going to multiply, so 251 plus x is less than or equal to 344, and then I'm going to take 344 minus the 251 and get x is less than or equal to 93. Oops, write that 3 better. There we go. So this is going to be what you need to be between. You need to be between an 85 and a 93 on this 4th test. Okay, so when we write down our final answer, so we defined a variable, we wrote a compound, we've solved it, so now you would write a complete sentence. They would need to score between, and what do we say, 85 and 93. 85 and 93 on the 4th test. And that'll give them the score that they want for the overall class. Okay? All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop. That concludes your notes, your and notes. So go ahead, if there's an assignment, do that. And if not, we'll talk about it in class.